Pom, it's time to debunk a bit of a myth that's going around. Now, this video all came about due to a conversation I was having on Twitter with little Swoop Luke, little boy on YouTube. He just makes videos. And basically, we were talking about Weitering, and he likes to throw out some things out there. And he basically said that Jacob Weitering doesn't tie Moore's shoelaces. And I thought, you know what? Why don't we do some research, have a look at how they actually compare? And it's probably also a good time to have a look at Jacob's growth from when he was drafted, because we're, entering that time where, we're entering year 7. We've got a lot of data now, and we can kind of get the gist of the type of player and how good Jacob Weitering will actually be. So why don't we start with Weitering's career and how you've seen it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're really good examples. I mean, like, we know Swoop Luke as well. If we're the Beatles of AFL YouTube, he would be the Wiggles. So, I mean, always take what he says with a pinch of salt. But Weitering and Moore's career has kind of been similar. Both kind of had a year where they were jettisoned as a forward because their coach lost the plot. So that stagnated their development. Both, really, we are comparing two real pedigree footballers here, where yeah, I think every AFL team, if they had an option to purchase them, would purchase one or the other. But Weitering in particular is someone whose development really has been huge. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when he was a forward, there was that question mark, was he good enough to be a back? Is he a forward? You could see that Carlton were kind of lost, weren't they, in that place of where is he? What is he? But now he's probably the first name on the team sheet. And you look at these career numbers, they are phenomenal. 5.8 marks, 2.1 intercept marks. An underrated part of Weitering's game, I think, is his spoils, the fact that he doesn't get marked on. So a lot of people, when they look at these key defenders, just look at the intercept marks and the marks and they get excited. I think the bigger one is the spoils. Do they, even when they lose the marking contest, have they got the ability to stop you marking? That is their primary job. And a one-on-one win percentage, I think, is phenomenal if you're playing for Carlton in the last 5 years of over 70%, 76.7%. That is phenomenal considering for about 3 years, he has been a one-man show down the back with Jonesy.
Yeah.
So, like, these two get peppered.
Yeah, 100%. He's really come on. Obviously, that second year where Bolton threw him as a forward. I mean, you can make the argument however you like. It was for his development. Some may say it was just a waste of time. But he definitely was low on confidence. And it's really good to see. I mean, obviously, a number 1 draft pick, highly touted. It's really good to see how he bounced back from that year, worked his way into the confidence. And then I think really probably end of 2019 is where I feel like he really started coming on. We had that nice patch of form towards the end of that year where David Teague was caretaker coach, and eventually led to him getting the job. And I remember a game Weitering missed. We won the game, but I remember how much of a void it was knowing that he wouldn't play. And then obviously 2020, I would say, was his real breakout year. Really stiff not to be in the All-Australian side, but obviously when you're not winning enough games, that's just the way it goes. And I have no issue with that. And 2021, I think he was probably even more stiff. He had one really, one bad game, we'll call it, where he had Nick Larkey kicked 7. But apart from that, I mean, he's had a really good record on the best forwards in the league. I mean, Hawkins, Dixon, etc. He's had a really solid record. Kennedy as well. So, I mean, when we look at Darcy Moore, I mean, I'll say this. They're both absolute superstars. And I think we're in a very unique time in the history of the game where we have defenders of this ilk playing. I think you could even throw in Harris Andrews in there as well. I think the 3 of them, I mean, I'm not sure if even Stephen May's pretty good, but I think the young sort of time is now defender. It's really these guys. And, Darcy Moore, not so dissimilar in his stats. What do you make of his defensive numbers?
Oh, they're exceptional. I mean, like I said at the start of the video, if you were a list manager and one of these 2 names came up on the market and you had an option to sign them, I don't think you'd have much argument and much debate that you'd do it. I think every side wants a player like this. I mean, Moore, very similar numbers. if you look at them in comparison, he's winning the one-on-one win percentage just, I mean, a percentage, less than a percentage is basically winning one one-on-one contest. Obviously, this is where we were talking about, though, the spoils factor. Darcy Moore doesn't genuinely go for the spoil. He is a mark first type footballer, where that's something that Weitering has adapted. It's a hard thing to do. You've got to imagine it. If you're a key defender, put themselves in their shoes. You're going to back yourself to take the mark all the time. You have to. But you look at the good versus the great. You look at Sauce when he was a player. You go back and watch the highlights. He kind of knew when was his marking contest, when he was going to lose it, and when to go into the spoil mode and beat them on the ground. But Darcy Moore is a phenomenal footballer. I'm picking hairs on him, really. But it's a great argument, because I genuinely think, without a shadow of a doubt, Weitering has fitness over Darcy Moore. He's always available. But I'd also say that, in my opinion, Weitering is a better ball user than Darcy Moore as well, and more of a transitional threat. That's something that we saw, I thought, this year from Jacob, which we haven't seen in years gone by. His willingness to take the grab, but also then make something happen. And that is what the modern day key defender does. The top players do that. You saw earlier against us what he did, which probably got him into the All-Australia in that game, that he could stop the attack, but then he could use the ball to turn it into attack. And that's something that Jacob is adding, and something that I think is exciting. But Darcy Moore's like Weitering. He hasn't got anyone with him. And that's what we're going to see from Jacob this year. He now is the main event, and he's having to nurse the other key position player. So it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just don't think they're as far apart as what some may believe. And I'm not sure if Luke's just being a little cheeky, but I know he said it on a few occasions. I just think if you had a draft and there were two players available and you had these two, you really can't lose.
Oh, you couldn't. I mean, I think when you actually stack them up against each other, in Luke's defence, the two things that he's got that Weitering hasn't got is, one, he plays for Collingwood, and two, he's got long hair. And you just know Luke has fallen in love with him, you know. But if we're talking footballer, I don't think Luke could honestly say Moore is astronomically better than Weitering. As a Carlton fan, I can't say Weitering is astronomically better than Moore. I think he's a better footballer, though. But both of these, you're talking, these are the winks of key defenders.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting part about Weeders, if I just go back here, is I feel like, I mean, you touched on it just now, where we haven't really unlocked his offensive potential, it seems, just yet. He started kicking the ball a bit more towards the end of 2021. What is the next layer for Jacob to unravel here?
I think that's it. I think now that I actually think this is going to be the making of him this year, because now he is really the captain down the back.
Yeah.
If we're honest, he's not the junior to Jones. He's now the senior guy. And I think what we saw last year was a lot of moments where he looks to take that corridor kick on. He is a very good kick as well. It's a very underrated part of his game. He uses the ball exceptionally well. And that's what I want to see from him this year. And I think that's what Voss is going to be wanting from him. You look at Port, that's the Port brand. We've got Doggies coaches, that's the Doggies brand as well. Take that intercept grab and as quickly as possible launch that counter-attack. This is Jacob Weitering's bread and butter, and it's something we saw throughout last year. And if you take the Larky game out of it, he was pretty unstoppable. And I would say Teague probably has him high up on the Christmas list, because any positives Teague left Carlton with is probably down to this man.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the leadership aspect as well. I'm not exactly sure. I can't say I know where Darcy Moore is in terms of the Collingwood hierarchy of leadership, because I just don't watch him as much for obvious reasons. But Weitering is, from our end, we're talking about him as, potentially the next captain if it's not a Sam Walsh. But he's definitely in that trio of Cripps, Walsh, Weitering. And obviously with Doc in there as well.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think in a dream scenario, teams would love Darcy Moore and Weitering. If you had both of them down the back, you've got a pretty strong down the back. I mean, you could probably play me and you with these guys and still win games. I mean, they are very good.
Yeah. Interesting conversation. You guys at home, let us know what you think. How do you compare the two, Weitering and Darcy Moore? How do you see their trajectories, and how do you see it all playing out? There's a solid amount of data now that we can kind of understand where they're at and where they're going to be, but it is always a fascinating discussion point. So let us know in the comments below.